Welcome to Grow Getters with host Davis Michaelsen, who's looking for and discovering agriculture's most inventive side hustles.
Grow Getters is brought to you by BASF and Veltima Fungicide. With the performance of Veltima Fungicide from BASF, you can take your best results even further. Hey everybody, welcome to Grow Getters. It's me, Davis Michaelsen, your host. Glad to be here. Glad that you've decided to join us for a really exciting conversation today with Back Road Cowgirls from backroadcowgirls.com. I've got a pair of guests to discuss these matters with. If you're just joining us, please just take a moment and like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our Grow Getters episodes. I know you're going to want to see them all. I'm so happy with all of them, and today is no exception. I'm very excited about this one. We'll be talking to Courtenay and Kiah. Both believe deeply in agriculture. This I snagged off of their website. Both believe, let me get this over here so I can see you. There you go. Both believe deeply in agriculture, the people behind it. Their fun, lighthearted storytelling about farming and ranching interconnects rural and urban communities. If you've seen any Grow Getters before, you know, chances are I brought up, what would you say to those people who, have no idea what's going on out here on the farm, those urban folk? I love this, so we're definitely going to talk about that. They show the critical role agriculture plays in society beyond the production of food. That's an important angle. Through an in-depth digital series, they're bringing everyone along for the ride. And I've viewed some installments of this series. It's terrific. And they say it here, and I would agree, because I used to watch Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown. Think Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown on a shoestring budget with a few more cows and a little less cursing. Let's go ahead and bring them in. Here's a quote from the website. Through authentic and candid storytelling, these cowgirls are taking agriculture mainstream. Backroadcowgirls.com. Courtenay, Dehoff, and let's see, I've got Kiah, Twisselman, Burchett. That's a mouthful there. Court and Kiah, welcome to Grow Getters.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. One of the first things that we like to do here, because roots run deep on the farm here at Grow Getters, I don't know who wants to go first, but we like to establish a little bit of farm cred so we kind of have an idea where you're coming from. You know what, Kiah, why don't you start us off here? Talk about your connections to farming.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned that roots run deep, and the same thing is true for, I would say, both mine and Courtney's roots. I grew up sixth generation on my family's cattle ranch in very rural California on the Central Coast. And my nieces are now the seventh generation to be growing up there. So commercial cattle herd, amongst other things like agritourism, mining, hunting, a very diversified operation. I did 4-H FFA growing up and found my way back into agriculture and a career in a very unexpected way, which we can get into in a bit. But now I find myself living on a small urban farm with my husband and my daughter here in Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, so from California to Louisville. We can talk about that jump later on. Courtenay, give us your story.
Yeah, similar to Kiah, I'm fifth generation, grew up on a cow-calf operation in Northeast Kansas. So my grandparents, my aunt, uncles, they still run, my cousin, they run a large cow-calf operation in the Flint Hills, and my mom and dad run a few pairs, but I grew up rodeoing, showing Angus cattle all over the country, and agriculture was just deeply, deeply, ingrained in me because everything I did revolved around agriculture. And I went to Oklahoma State on a rodeo scholarship and continued my ag, education there. I was an ag communications major and somehow wound up in the world of television. So as Kiah said, that's a story we can get into a little bit later, but that is my background. I come from a ranching family.
What was your event in the rodeo?
I ran barrels, I tied goats, and I roped. So I did a little bit of everything.
Wow. Now, Kiah, you mentioned a big move clear over to Kentucky. I know there's a rich farming community over in that part of the country, but it's quite a bit different from what you left. Talk to us about that. What was that transition like?
I'll say this. I think the culture shock of Kentucky hit me a little less severely because before moving to Kentucky, I had lived in Germany for a year. So the fact that in Kentucky they spoke English, or at least a variation of it, made it feel a little bit, more welcoming than living abroad. But I'll say this. the biggest culture shock that I was not expecting at all here in Kentucky, it wasn't the people, it wasn't the food, it was the agriculture industry, specifically the beef industry. I took my first, I say, quote unquote, big kid job here in Kentucky, working for the Kentucky Beef Council as their director of consumer affairs. And I did not realize how Western of a lens I had of the beef industry. And I learned very quickly how vastly different the beef industry specifically is this side of the Mississippi River for sure. They don't brand calves here. They usually don't gather horseback. They have that wet stuff that falls from the sky, which I was unfamiliar with in California. Drastically different. And I have such a rich appreciation for how diverse the beef industry is from one sector of the industry to another, from one side of the country to the other. It is vastly different. And I ended up marrying a Kentucky farm boy who grew up on a row crop operation too. So learning that side of things because I did not grow up on a row crop operation.
Okay, very good. Well, and I don't know. I've got some stuff here in my notes where I mentioned farms in my head. See, I grew up among row crops. Basically, I was born inside a cornfield, and for the first 5 years, I was in a waterway. Um, I put farm in my head. Farm and ranch sort of mean the same thing. Uh, Courtney, I know that some ranchers feel differently than I do about that. Can you address this for us, please?
Yeah, for sure. I've learned that it totally depends on the region of
Hmm.
the country that you're in, you know? So like I grew up in Kansas, the Midwest. If you're running cows, cattle, typically you would call yourself a rancher. But my mom and dad, my grandparents, we also farmed. We also put up hay. You know, we were doing all of the things. But a little bit like Kiah, it depends on sort of where you are in the country, you know, and Kiah, maybe you can correct me or jump in if I'm wrong, because this may not be completely accurate, but you know, you talk about the Mississippi River and going west, you know, or east rather of the Mississippi, it isn't necessarily ranches, right? They call themselves farmers, even if they're running cattle. And I think it's just sort of a preference depending on where you're from, you know, and all over the world. I traveled to Australia and they don't call them ranches, they call them stations. And so, you know, we all have our different things, but I think at the end of the day, the values are all the same, right? And we all have those same values and that same mission to feed, clothe, and really provide for the world.
Stations, not farms, not ranches,
Stations.
stations. Wow.
Yeah. Large
I'm
cattle operations are stations.
huh. I did not know that. Well, we need to come to it here. Clearly, you've got the farm cred, the ranch cred. You've got all the cred we need to continue the conversation here. Um, where did backroadcowgirls.com come from? How did the two of you meet? Were you how were you
Yeah.
friends as kids? How did this work?
Well, you know, Backroad Cowgirls really happened because of wine. You know, we
Which
were
is an
All
drinking.
agricultural
right.
commodity, you know.
Some of
Yeah,
my
yeah.
best ideas involved wine.
Exactly, exactly. No, Kaya and I, we actually met. We were ambassadors for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association for their big convention. We were both
Oh,
selected
okay.
as ambassadors. And we told someone just yesterday, we became friends because we both brought our moms as our like plus
True.
one. And our moms became friends. So we're like, well, I guess if they're hitting it off, I guess we have to hit it
You have
off.
to.
And
Mhm.
so we sort of became friends that way and just stayed in touch. And then Kaya, I'll let you jump in and sort of tell the story of how Backroad Cowgirls, how that idea really came to fruition.
Yeah, you know, at this stage, both Courtney and I were doing our thing, traveling around the country, getting to speak on stages to agriculture communities and communities outside of agriculture. And I had a 7 hour layover in Dallas, which is where Courtney's at now. And so Courtney so graciously swooped me up and took me out on a lunch date. And there we are, eating pasta, drinking wine, and dreaming about the future and talking about all of our big hopes and dreams and what we want to do in the world. And Courtney, you know, as she mentioned, she has had a long career in TV, and you know, honestly, I've always wanted a TV show. What little kid doesn't want their TV show? That's been a long dream of mine too. But another dream I had at the time was I want to rent a camper van and travel around the country. And unfortunately for me, I married a husband who really likes his long hot showers and shut that idea down so fast.
Mhm.
But Courtney, who is an adventurer at heart, she said, "Oh, well, I'd travel the country with you in a camper van." Long story short, by the end of lunch that day, we had decided if we want to travel, if we want to do the camper van situation, if we want to create our own TV show, what if instead of sitting around and hoping that someone discovers us, what if we just go for it and make a TV show ourselves? What if we rent the van and go ahead and do it? And by the end of lunch, we already had the name picked out. We were going to call it Back Road Cowgirls. Courtney and I both, at the heart of our work, we're storytellers, and we're really, really passionate about telling the stories of agriculture, not just in a way that connects to other agriculturalists, while that's so important, in a way that really connects with people outside of the industry. And a month and a half later, we had rented a van off of somebody on Instagram, a very, very janky old van. It did break down one time on our trip. And a month and a half later, we were hitting the road and filming these episodes across my home state of California. So I would say this really began with wine, pasta, and being delusional enough to believe in your big, bold dreams.
I love that. I love the spirit behind that. We're going to talk some more about that, but first I'd like to sing you a song. I don't know if you'd have any use for a jingle or not, but I did sort of put this together for you. We'll play Name That Tune at the end. See if you recognize it. You can see them on the interweb and social, telling the tale everybody needs. They're bringing you farm life through Courtenay and Kiah's camera to post for all to see on the interweb. So what you gonna do, Backroads Cowgirl, when them old boots hit the dirt? There's urban viewers too, tell the story too, who fills their grocery baskets every day. What you gonna do, Backroad Cowgirl, to shine a light on farming folks? What you gonna do, Backroad Cowgirl, to showcase farming life on the internet?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I love it.
David.
We need to.
Any idea?
I don't know,
It's a bit of a
trademark
deep
that.
cut. A bit of a
Oh,
deep cut. Any
cowboy.
idea what it might be?
What you
Isn't
gonna
that
do
what
with a
it's called?
cowboy?
It is
Yeah.
What You Gonna Do with a Cowboy.
Yeah, of course.
Excellent. Garth
Of
Brooks, Chris
course.
Ledoux.
Nailed it. I like this rendition better, though. I hope it doesn't offend Mr. Brooks.
I think he'll be okay with it.
I
I
think
think he'll
so.
be okay. He never calls me anyway, so it's fine.
Rude.
Probably won't come up. Being in rodeo, you obviously probably know all about Chris Ledoux and his music and all of that sort of stuff. I had no idea. This is just straight up serendipity right now.
We will be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Veltima fungicide outyields the competition by an average of 7 bushels per acre. But you've never been average. The only competition that really matters is you versus you. And with the performance of Veltima fungicide from BASF, you can take your best results even further. Beat your own record. Get every bushel you deserve. And make this your best season yet with Veltima fungicide from BASF. Always read and follow label directions.
Courtney, let's go to you. Talk to me about Backroads Cowgirl. We've sort of talked about what the idea was, how you got there. Tell me what you do. What does it look like now in the present day?
Yeah, for sure. So, like I had said, we were maybe a little bit audacious, and we decided to shoot 16 episodes in 2 weeks.
Whoa.
So it was a lot. So I shot and edited all the episodes. Kiah built the website, did the interviews, so we just really teamed up on our strengths to sort of create these episodes. And we also got really, really lucky. We had a wonderful photographer reach out to us, and she said, "Hey, do you have like a photographer coming?" And we said, "No, and we have no money, but we would love for you to come." And she said, "Okay, great." And so Shelby Caitlin jumped in the van with us and completely transformed the project. All the beautiful photography is hers. But we just set out across California. Kiah had so many wonderful connections, and we told stories, just great stories. And the focus really was about the people. Obviously, every story had to have an ag connection, but our focus was really the people, because we knew the educational component would be there. But in Kiah and I's opinion, a lot of times in agriculture, it's education, 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 facts, 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 data, research, figures. And we really wanted to get to the heart of the story, because I was taught and trained as a journalist that the way that you connect with people is through here, right? It's through their heart. It's through making them feel something. And the way you get people to trust you as a storyteller is to impact them and make them feel something. And so that was really our goal with Back Road Cowgirls. So we told all of these amazing stories and we posted them on YouTube, and people followed along online on social media while we were doing it. And, we sort of, the plan at that point was like, we're going to go to every state. We crowdfunded to like be able to afford hotel rooms and a little bit of food
Okay.
for the three of
Yeah.
us. And fuel. I mean, we didn't make any money, but we're like, we're going to go to every state. We have all these big plans. And we had a group reach out to us actually while we were still on that trip 3 years ago, Kiah. And they were like, we want to be involved. And we're like, well, we're already on the road, and Kiah reached out, and this awesome organization, Simplot Grower Solution, they came on board to fund a fully produced pilot, like a professionally shot pilot with a production company that we could then shop out. Because our goal still with Backroad Cowgirls is we want this to be on a mainstream platform, an Amazon, a Netflix, a Hulu. We want this show to be accessible to the masses, not just to those of us in agriculture. Because Kiah mentioned it earlier, we don't want to just be in the echo chamber. We really want to bring these stories to the masses and teach and show people who's behind, their food and their clothing, and from, chefs to farmers to ranchers to you name it. There's so many diverse people in the industry, but, so that's sort of the goal. That's sort of where we are right now. And Kiah, I don't know if you want to expand a little bit on sort of just what it looks like for us now. We've been diligently working behind the scenes to sort of see what's next and what makes the most sense, because the TV industry is hard. It's hard to sell a show. It's hard to get, to get your foot in those rooms. And so we're constantly pivoting, but we're really excited about the future.
Yeah, I would say that you summed it up well, Court. And we as Courtney said, we have not given up on that dream of taking these stories mainstream and really connecting them with the hearts of people. Because at the end of the day, what I want is some mom who's freshly postpartum like I am to be sitting and nursing her baby on her couch in the middle of, I don't know, Los Angeles, watching this show, the third show she's binge watched in the last week, and to say, oh my gosh, I had no idea that I would have so much in common with that farmer that I learned about from Minnesota. Something like that. We really wanted it to be something that could connect on that human level. And we've got a really, really great team behind the scenes that's been working diligently on making connections. And what I can't tell you for sure is where Backroad Cowgirls is going to end up. But if you haven't picked up on it already, Courtney and I are, I would say, delightfully delusional and very audacious, and we are not ones to give up on our dreams. So we're kind of holding them loosely in our hands, knowing that the way that they're supposed to shape up is going to happen. Maybe not on the timeline that we had in mind, but right when it's supposed to.
Yeah. Well, I've seen what you've got on your website there at backroadcowgirls.com. A couple episodes there. I think it was Alaska, Texas, New York, Germany. The one that really got me was the cattle drive thing. That's a heck of a story. Can you tell us a little bit more about the cattle drive video that you have on there?
Is this the Twisselman Ranch story, cattle drive?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I am obviously a little bit biased here because the Twisselman Ranch story is about my family's ranch in rural
Mhm.
California. And I've got to tell you this, Davis, when Courtney and I first decided that we were going to do this project, and if you were to go and find our original Word document, you would see at the very, very top of that the number one rule that we had was to have a heck of a good time. And
Mm.
we said that if at any point in this project we weren't having fun, that we either needed to pivot and figure out a different way to do it or scrap it and start over. And what I can say confidently is even if Backroad Cowgirls didn't go any further, and I think I speak for both of us, I would say that it was absolutely worth it. And selfishly, personally, for that episode alone, the one that we got to do about my family's ranch,
Oh yeah.
it is one of the things that I'm going to treasure for the rest of my life. Something that I didn't expect on that journey was getting to interview my grandfather, who has now since passed, and the amount of clarity that he gave me as I pivot in my career and kind of find my own place in agriculture. I grew up in an ag family who also did a lot of rodeo, like Courtney's talking to, and I never felt like I quite fit because I grew up in a ranching family. I grew up in a rodeo family, but I wasn't a big horse girl, and I liked people most. And I always wonder, like, what is my place here? How am I going to give back to the ranch if am not living on the ranch anymore, if I don't have the boots on the ground? And in that interview, my grandfather told me something that has completely rewired my brain and gave me the peace that I need as I continue moving forward in my career. And he said, the ranch is here to give you roots. And roots are meant to help you grow, but not stay stuck. And he really gave me this gift of recognizing that maybe my way of contributing back to my family's legacy, to agriculture's legacy, is actually in helping share these stories. And that just felt like the greatest gift ever for me to be able to have that conversation with my grandpa, to be able to share that in such a special way. And for Courtney, of course, to help shoot and produce that was amazing. And I hope that other people are gonna get to see their family stories shared in this way too.
Yeah, yeah, that's really terrific. I'm gonna for each of my Grow Getters guests gets an ode. I'm gonna sing you one more song. While I do, it's actually kind of a device for your benefit. I want you to think about. I'm gonna ask you each separately. Somewhere there's some ranch kid, some kid hanging out, hanging on the top of the fence at the rodeo on the side of the thing. They're looking at you saying, "Wow, what a cool, great thing. I think I have an idea that I could do something with, just like they did with their idea." Don't tell me now. Think it through. I'm going to come back to you and ask you to give advice to our young viewers and maybe our old viewers too. We'll go with this though. Court and Kiah, the Backroad Cowgirls, to shine a candid light on agriculture's pearls. Court and Kiah, delightful digital diaries about ag. Cattle ranchers, vintners, and more. See you, This never happens. I always make it all the way through without getting tongue-tied. I'm going to take it back at cattle ranchers. Are you ready? Cattle ranchers, vintners, and more. See Alaska, Texas, New York, even Germany too, huh? Court and Kiah on the Grow Getters Show. Well, not my cleanest work, but a heartfelt tribute to the both of you. I love what you both got going on, and what you're trying to do here. Give us a little bit of that advice for that farm kid, that ranch kid. Maybe they're feeling like, oh, I've got these roots. Yeah, I get the root part. I just don't get the movement part. Court, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I think, my piece of advice would be for both Kiah and I. We grew up in small towns. I mean, we grew up in small towns on farms, on ranches. We were small town ag kids. And I just would encourage everyone listening, don't be afraid to dream big. I grew up in a place called Tonganoxie, Kansas, okay? And I have lived in New York. I've lived in Europe. I've lived in Dallas. I've traveled all over the world. I've seen cultures and met people from all different backgrounds. And it's simply because I had a dream. I wanted to see the world and I wanted to tell great stories. So I think my advice would be, just don't let your geography, your background, don't let what other people say, don't let any of that hold you back. Because if you have a dream, the only person at the end of the day who has to believe in you is you. And don't be afraid to show up authentically as yourself, because my own personal journey with my brand Fancy Lady Cowgirl, it really is all about me trying to fit into the TV industry, which meant I took my cowboy hat off and I hid my ag background, only to step back into it a decade later and discover that the ag kid, that little girl from Tonganoxie, Kansas, that was the best part of who I was. So do not be afraid to bust stereotypes. Do not be afraid to dream big. And remember, the only person that needs to believe in your dream is you.
That's really nice. Well said. Tongie's a fine town, though. I will say it's not far from here. Actually,
Tongie. Yep.
Kiah, I'd be interested for you to weigh in on this one as well. Go ahead, please.
Okay, can I give two things?
Two things. You got them.
Two things. Okay, the first one is this, and Courtney kind of mentioned it. I think one of the things that has enriched Courtney's story, her experience, and the way that she can just speak to people so clearly is that Courtney has experienced the world. And if your dream, if you grew up on a ranch or a farm and you want to stay there and continue your legacy there in your own way, I'm not forcing you to leave. However, I do think that it is absolutely vital for us to get out of our comfort zone, to get out of our bubble, to get out of our safe spaces, to meet and connect with people that are vastly different from us, because it is going to open up our mind, open up our world, open up our network in beautiful ways. And I never appreciated my home, my ranch, and agriculture as an industry more than when I stepped away from it. So that's my first one.
Mhm.
Number two, if you have a big dream or an idea like this, let's say you're having some wine and pasta and you're like, wait, I've got an idea. I want to encourage you to be willing to start messy and to let it suck at first. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of us have this vision, this dream for ourselves. And if we don't feel like we have the right resources, if we don't think it's going to look good, we squash our dreams before we even let these seeds come to life. And I think we have to be willing to let our dreams start off messy, start off complicated, because the only way we're going to learn is by going and moving forward and taking that next step. The only way you get good at something is having the capacity to let yourself be kind of bad at it at first.
Mhm.
And I think that that has served me so well in my whole life, is being willing to start messy. And yeah, so if you have a big dream, be willing to be really bad at it in order for yourself to bring it to life.
Nice. That's really good advice. That's liberating advice too, isn't there? As a musician, I know a lot of musicians struggle, and I did too for a long time. Oh, I don't sound like Elton John. I don't sound like whoever. Well, yeah, he's a whole different guy than me, and I'm an
Right.
individual. I think that's exactly what you're saying is, and it sounds simple. It sounds so obvious, and but people miss it. There's
Mhm.
only one you. That's all there is. That's all there is. And we weren't made to be the same. Wow, what a terrific conversation. I have one more question from my notes here, because we could go on and on. I think we're gonna have to come back and talk again in a few months, get an update from you, because the other thing is you're starting in a position where media is changing. And
Mm,
people aren't watching television like they used to anymore. They're turning on
right.
streaming services and YouTube and taking in entertainment in a way that's not only extremely accessible for the viewer, but also for the creators. We can just make a video on our phone and throw it on YouTube really quick. It's a very, very interesting time. Over to my question: who owns the most hats? I looked through your videos. Who has the most hats? It seems like there's a lot of hats, or are there just a few that make a lot of appearances?
Uh, I don't know. Do I own the most hats?
Okay.
Well, I don't
Mhm.
know.
I
Are we
don't
talking
know,
cowboy
honestly.
hats?
Say again.
Are we talking cowboy hats or?
I think we'll broaden it to just hats in
Okay.
general.
Well, then
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
could be a toss-up. That could be a toss-up. Kyle
Well,
wears a lot of
I'll
good
say
hats.
this.
Mhm.
I am a little bit more of a hoarder than Courtney, which probably means that I own more hats. But
Okay.
I think
Okay.
that Courtney, it is rare that you will find her doing her thing without her cowboy hat on.
Mhm.
I like to mix it up. Sometimes I like to wear the cowboy hat. Sometimes I like to wear the headband. Sometimes I like to wear nothing at all.
Maybe a
I mean,
beret.
I'll wear
Yeah.
something, but I mean on my head. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I would say Courtney is a little bit more hat. Uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Hat loyal,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. All right.
but
Well,
I
very
probably
good.
have more hats.
Well, I can highly recommend I'm going to make sure I get it right. Backroadcowgirls.com. There's some videos on there. Looks like there's some stuff on YouTube from you all as well, but we do, hope that your dream comes true, and that you find your way to that perfect little spot where you can get it all done. The production on the stuff is fantastic. Very well done, ladies. Backroadcowgirls.com. It's Court, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Davis.
Thanks.
Well, production support provided by Zach Zingula for Grow Getters. It's Davis Michaelsen. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And hey, everybody, let's get out there and grow get 'em.
Grow Getters is a production of Farm Journal Studios, where no one grows alone.